Imagine living a life of the constant unknown, facing conditions and places that none of your countrymen have ever faced. Days of constant challenges, unique in their own way, with the possibility of death ever present. Alone, except for an occasional support crew, mostly local. Imagine this and exploring large parts of 19th century India, Pakistan, northern southern Africa, the Middle East, North and South America, Europe, a good portion of this geographically prohibitive. Places deep in the harshest of jungles, barren deserts, often great distances from civilization. Places prohibitive also in not accepting outsiders and with a call for execution if found. Imagine this as a career, even more, a passion, an obsession to know, understand, discover, and experience. Specifically, I am asking you to imagine the life of British explorer Captain Sir Richard Francis Burton. This episode will be about my introduction to the explorer adventurer. His story is unlike any other. I believe him to be the most driven, most capable, and an explorer adventurer with no equal. Now, I will take you back to when I first learned about Richard. This was one of my long trips, many years ago. It was around South America. There, I logged over 20,000 miles by train, bus, hiking, walking, and about 22,000 miles of internal flights. I always spend months, often more than a year, preparing for such a trip. I try to learn all I can about a given place out of interest, but also for survival. The U.S. State Department and a number of advisory organizations had strongly warned against travel in South America at that time, particularly in Peru. It was my opportunity to visit South America. I couldn't skip Peru. Peru lived up to the warning of discouraging travel with an exhausting number of incidents. While there, I was held hostage with AK-47 automatic rifles, held at my temple by the Shining Path. These are a Maoist organization. I witnessed a massacre of about 150 people, was robbed by police at gunpoint, and caught them trying to plant drugs in my backpack. Robbed by police a second time, witnessed genocide, had my backpack cut into with a machete while on my back, experienced violent demonstrations, saw the aftermath of a bus having driven off into a deep ravine and rolling a number of times on the first part of the highway, which is said to be the most dangerous in the world. And I chased down and tackled a man who stole my backpack. I also witnessed the harsh life of the Quechua and Aymara-speaking native Peruvians, both who are descendants of the Incas. These tribes were in the middle of a conflict that had nothing to do with them. Tens of thousands of them, maybe much more, were killed by revolutionaries and the military in the interest of preventing them from going to the other side. These are some of the things that happened while I was there. I have experienced something similar in a number of my other travels. When I landed, I knew I would be in for a number of interesting experiences. One of the first was in observing numerous army tanks in Lima, the capital, and the soldiers popping out of the top of these tanks with concerned faces. One of my resources for this trip was an organization called South American Explorers, or South American Explorers Club, SAC, I'll call it. This is an organization dedicated to research, exploration, awareness, especially in the fields of biology, geography, archaeology, anthropology, and political science. I turned to them for information in preparing for the trip. and then spent time in their libraries in South America. It was also a club, meaning it promoted networking of those associated with its objective. The library and club were absolutely fascinating to me, both for its information and, more impressively, the people I would find there. SAC was a place where we all shared the latest information on challenges and research of South America. This was a time before the internet. We all had stories, like what I described above, of our travels in South America. They encouraged each of us to produce trip reports to be used by individuals in the future. I read through quite a number of these. On my frequent visits to SAC, I came across archaeologists studying ruins of cities previously lost in the Amazon, an individual searching underground Inca tunnels looking for their lost gold, which from early descriptions must have been in the thousands of tons. I also met filmmakers, documentarians on subjects specifically about South America. I met an individual from the Amazon who had discovered unknown languages from there, scientists doing geological studies, and studies on recently discovered flora, fauna, and numerous others doing worthwhile explorations of the continent. I was invited on several of these expeditions. I turned these down as any one of them should be preceded with months of planning and a strong commitment to visiting these places. I also knew that I would certainly contract tropical diseases, infections, and would be risking my life more than I already had. One day at SAC, I was having a discussion with a French archaeologist, and he began speaking about Richard F. Burton, the explorer, not to be confused with Richard Burton, the actor. He talked about the influence Richard had on his life. I too became awed with Richard. I immediately bought my first biography of him and quickly read through it. I'll leave the title in the show notes. I can't imagine that anyone has known as much about as many places as he has. He had to know all he could about a place, a model I try to follow. The archaeologist and I both knew if Richard had been a contemporary of ours, we might very well have run across him inside SAC. Much of what he did, places he went, he was not the first Westerner to do so. Others, he was the first, but to the extent he went to was unprecedented and never repeated. What he studied, what he wrote, was almost completely unknown to outsiders. His passion for travel was different, more heightened. He had a greater desire to understand. He had to become a local to understand their most insightful secrets, the esoteric, perverse, unusual, and mystical. Europe in the 19th century or 1800s was and had been for a few centuries a time of colonial greed, arrogance, and competition to accumulate territorial possessions. It seemed like a game to show your superiority. The empire on which the sun never sets became a well-known expression. It applied to the 16th century Austrian Empire, the Spanish Empire of the 16th to 18th century, and the British Empire of the 19th and 20th century. There was also a push to explore and understand the new lands. This gave opportunity to those with explorer, adventurer traits. Some may have been seeking fame or fortune, but others were driven mostly by curiosity, such as Richard Burton. Richard's dedication to understanding local peoples around the world was frowned upon by English society, as they didn't see the point. After all, there was nothing to learn from these barbarian cultures. My purpose in speaking about Richard is not to marvel at his life as something unattainable, but rather for the potential it was. Of this type of life, it is my belief he was the person who most fully lived his potential. We won't have the opportunity to discover places which our own countrymen have never visited, not to the extent that Richard did, and not on this planet. But we can take a similar curiosity and allow it to discover new challenges and worlds available to us, which were unavailable to him. While Richard may have had some notable athletic and endurance abilities, he was still just a man with weaknesses, sorrows, struggles, and sadness. We should expect and pursue more of ourselves, which is what he did that was different. The next episode will be about the first half of Richard's life, a life every bit as exciting as an Indiana Jones film. Please support the channel by pressing like, subscribe, and let others know as well. Thank you so much for watching.